Hi, welcome to City Vision University's Introduction to Christian Addiction Counseling course. My name's Andrew Sears, and I'm the president of City Vision University. And I wanted to start off and tell you a little bit of why this course and why our addiction counseling program is really important. So the one-liner we say whenever we try to explain what City Vision is about, we train Christians to serve the poor, the addicted, and the underserved. So what that really means is one of our main focuses in our largest program is Christian addiction counseling. So part of the reason for that is our founding dean, Michael Limata, he went through recovery, was one of the leaders among Christians in recovery for over 30 years. And he helped develop this program along with a lot of other Christians. So my own background, I grew up in a neighborhood where I saw a lot of my friends get addicted. I worked at a Burger King that was a drug house. And everyone was doing meth, and I saw their lives ruined. My own drug of choice was largely behavioral addictions, workaholism, codependency. And in '96, I turned back to God and entered into recovery, and God saved me through that process, but spent 15 years of intensive experience in recovery groups and Christian counseling. And because of that, that's a core value for me also. So that's why our addiction counseling program is our largest program here at City Vision. Now, this course is pretty unique. Usually at most schools, you're going to either have an introduction to addiction counseling course, or you're going to have an introduction to Christian counseling course. But because of our values, we decided we wanted to do an introduction to Christian addiction counseling course. So what we're doing is we're combining two textbooks. One textbook which is one of the widest used Introduction to Addiction Counseling textbooks, and another one that is one of the widest used Introduction to Christian Counseling textbooks. So just to give you a quick overview on this. So this book, Christian Counseling and Christianity, 5 Approaches, what we're going to go through in this course is we're going to spend a week each covering each of these perspective. So we're going to start with levels of explanation, which is largely a secular, then something called the integration model, Christian psychology, transformational counseling, and biblical counseling. Now that's going to be one track of this course. The other track of this course, the introduction to addiction counseling. So there are the 8 practice domains of addiction counseling. So you have clinical evaluation, treatment planning, referral, education, documentation, service coordination, professional and ethical responsibilities in counseling. And whenever you try to get licensed as an addiction counselor, you need to have competency across all these dimensions. And then they also have something called the transdisciplinary foundations. So these are within U.S. standards and also international standards. So we're going to be covering both this kind of Christian perspective and this perspective that's needed if you're going to pursue licensing. So the course outcomes, the first part of the course, we just want you to understand these 5 perspectives, so be able to describe them. Then part of what we're going to do in this course, we want this to be a course where you imagine that you are a counselor. So we're going to give you a case study, and then you're going to apply each of the 5 approaches. So if you're working in a biblical counseling organization or in a secular organization, what would be your treatment plan for a sample case of someone that you're counseling? Then in the end of the course, we want you to reflect on your own values and those of any organizations you might work for to try to synthesize these 5 approaches into your own philosophy and your own values for Christian counseling. And then the 4th one is basically to introduce you to each of the domains of addiction counseling, and all the 4 domain or the 8 domains that we covered before. So now the course outlined by week, we're going to start off with Introduction to Christian Counseling. That's week 1. And then for most weeks, there's going to be an addiction counseling track, and there's going to be a Christian counseling track. So in the Christian counseling track, you're going to be covering levels of explanation in week 2. And on the addiction counseling, you're going to be doing the assessment process. So in week 3, you're going to be doing co-occurring disorders and behavioral addictions. And then on the Christian counseling side, you're going to be doing integration model, relapse prevention, self-help groups, and then Christian counseling side, you're going to be doing Christian psychology model, techniques specific to addiction counseling, and then transformational counseling model, culturally aware addiction counseling, and then the biblical counseling model. And then in week 7 and 8, really we're going to be trying to prepare you to be an addiction counselor. So and help you develop a plan. So developing a plan for your degree, if you're pursuing licensure or certification and career in addiction counseling. And then week 8 really is about the long term. How do you do this to avoid compassion fatigue, burnout, secondary trauma, and self-care? So, plan to spend about an average of 17 hours per week for this 3-credit course. So we follow kind of this pyramid called Bloom's taxonomy. So the first goal of this course, and this is a survey course, so mainly we're focused on the bottom parts of this. So we want you to be able to remember you're going to be introduced to a wide range of topics that you're going to go into much more detail in other courses. And so we often will provide you both a video and reading. Studies have shown that combining those together will help retention. Take notes while you do that. And then you can use that to demonstrate your understanding through forums and live meetings. And then you're going to be applying a lot of this through treatment plans from each of the 5 perspectives. And in some cases, we'll have assignments where you're going to be applying the material you learn in addiction counseling to cases. And then on the evaluate, so we're going to have a final paper where you're going to actually look at each of these 5 perspectives and think those through and decide, what really is kind of your unified perspective on that. Now, one of the things you're going to need to look at in this course is, do you plan to pursue addiction counseling licensing? So I want to give you a quick overview on that. Most states will have a licensing model either from NADAC, the National Association for Addiction Counseling, or IC&RC standards. And most states, so this is if you're in the U.S., internationally, they often will use IC&RC, so it's the same type of thing. Most will require some combination of education hours, so City Vision courses count towards that. An exam, we help prepare you to pass the exam, and we have courses that are particularly focused on that, like our certification prep course. But you're also going to need supervised hours and sometimes practicum hours that you could get some of that through taking a practicum course through City Vision, and then you're going to need work experience hours. Now, some states only require supervised work experience. Some states require practicum. I'm just going to show you one state. So this is Missouri. So there's a certified alcohol and drug counselor. So in Missouri, it requires 180 education hours, 300 practicum hours, and then the amount of experience hours to become a certified alcohol and drug counselor depends on whether you have a bachelor's and associate's or high school. And then they have you take an IC&RC, the alcohol and drug counselor exam. Now, it's important to recognize the difference between licensure, which comes from a state and comes from the government. And usually most certifications, some states will make these two synonymous, but often certification is tied to an association. So, and this should actually be, I missed an A on this, NADAC with a second A. And so there you have a National Certified Addiction Counselor certification, and then they have additional standards that you can use. So one of the things we want you to do in this week is we want you to look up what are the standards where you're located and what's required to become a certified addiction counselor. So I'm really excited about this course. I think this is going to be one of the best courses and in one of the strongest or the strongest degree program here at City Vision. So if you have any questions, please ask your faculty. Thanks.